You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com, thechrisvossshow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Should children be listening to this show? I don't know. I'll check with the attorneys. Welcome to Big Podcast. We certainly appreciate you guys being here. 14 years. We're going on 1,500 episodes. I actually got to change the 1,400 thing. And we're just looking to have a great year. Lots of great podcasts. We just released a great podcast with the guy who created first-person shooters. He created Wolfenstein 3D, Doom, and everything else. Go check that out. And just a wonderful interview that we've been sitting around the can. We finally got to release it. So go check that as well. Today we're going to be talking with an amazing top expert in branding, marketing, building a business, and image and all that sort of good stuff. And she's going to be telling me, of course, probably how to dress better and brand things better on the Chris Voss Show, which usually involves looking better, which of course I don't, which I think we talked about in the green room that her suggestion was that I should be replaced by AI. We might talk some AI stuff, so we'll get into that as well. We have an amazing woman on the show. Diana Fryc is on the show with us today, and she's going to be talking to us about her amazing journey that she's done. She is a marketing industry executive with over 20 years advising brands from Fortune 50 to startups on how to address their toughest growth challenges. As a partner and chief growth officer of branding firm Retail Voodoo, she uses her expertise in brand development, innovation, consumer markets, marketing, and packaging systems to help clients generate meaningful and sustainable growth. Tireless and determined, she's obsessed, I say, with the world of food. Sounds like me. Beverage and wellness brands. I'm wearing most of it too. She has been building long-standing client relationships. People trust her to put the right combination of people and business assets together to move mountains. She also hosts the Gooder podcast. Is it Gooder or Gooder?
No, Gooder. Although I like Gooder because with the beverage and the food connection, that's nice.
Sell a wine that says or vodka that says Gooder. The Gooder vodka. Why drink it? Because it's Gooder. See, look, I know a little bit of branding. I know about 5 minutes of branding. You can fit on a thin bowl. She interviews powerful women, executives in the food, beverage, and wellness industries about their branding, leadership, and related topics in the consumer packaged goods industry today. Welcome to the show, Diana. How are you?
I am fine, Chris. Might be the best intro to a podcast I've been on since I've been doing this, and it's been for several years, so I just loved it. Thank you.
There you go. Thank you. This is why they pay me $5 a show. Can I get my check yet? They said next year. Anyway, I think the writer's strike for the checks are with the actors in Hollywood. So there you go. Did I get your last name correctly? I want to make sure
you got it right. Yeah, you got it perfect. Yeah.
There you
absolutely.
Go. So give us your .coms. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs and learn more about you? And
for sure. Company? Yeah. So Retail Voodoo, you can find us at retail-voodoo. So some people say retail-voodoo.com. And that's where you'll learn about our business of branding and marketing. And you'll also find kind of the homepage for the Gooder podcast. And if you are looking for the Gooder podcast, we are on all the platforms, the Apple, the I don't know, what are they all on anymore? Spotify, Amazon, Google Plus, all of them. And you'll find, I've only been doing the podcast for just over 3 years now. So
congratulations.
Yeah. Plenty of amazing guests on the show. Thanks for letting me share that.
There you go. We love it. Most podcasts don't make it past, what is it, episode 20 or something like that.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
One of my friends who runs one of the big houses told me one day, he goes, the average 80% of podcasts will die by episode 7. The 20% that live will die by episode 2025, especially if they don't have their own .com.
Oh,
And
really?
sites like Anchor have
Yeah.
like probably 500,000 dead, what I call zombie podcasts on them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's why if you can last, and put out, at least past 25 episodes, you're
Yeah.
in the top percentage.
Oh, yeah. I'm around 200, something like that.
There you go. Good
Yeah.
job. Good
Yeah.
job. So give us a 30,000 overview of what retail voodoo is and how it works.
Sure. So Retail Voodoo, we're a branding firm, and branding is a super slippery word right now because it could mean a number of things. So branding is not just graphic design, but it is also in our world what we call strategic marketing. So when you're building a brand, it's all of those elements of, we call it North Star and business development. So target audience. What do you stand for? What are your mission, vision, values? All of those elements that you want to pull together to make sure that when you get to design and marketing and all of those other kind of activities, that you're all in alignment and that you're creating materials and design elements that are all pointed to the same part of the business. So it doesn't come across sort of disjointed or confusing out for the marketplace, if that makes any sense at all. So yeah, so we do that business part and we do the design part and we do design or marketing, and mostly for brands that are in food, beverage, wellness, fitness, all of that sort of anything you put in your body or on your body. That's the world that we work with.
There you go. And I know we were talking about this CPG, consumer brand packaging, or no, hold on.
Yeah, CPG is consumer packaged goods.
There you go.
And it's kind of broken out in our industry, in the packaging industry or the consumer goods industry. You have, everybody knows consumer electronics. That's its very own category. CPG is anything that you would buy that you would put you would buy that's in a package or in a box or a bag or something like that. And then it's delineated between fast moving consumer goods. So anything that you would purchase weekly or monthly, like groceries or shampoo. And then there's hard goods and soft goods like clothing and water skis and, luggage and that sort of thing.
There you go. So how did you get in this business? And then we'll get into some of the details with advice on branding and stuff that people can use.
Really? Yeah, that's a really crazy story. So let's see. When I first was in the industry, I was just a marketing generalist, and then decided
not a marketing generalist,
a generalist. So I know.
Touches my
so that means I did a little bit of everything for. I was working at an insurance company at the time, which was a really great company to work for, but not exciting business unless you're really into finance. And there are people that are really into finance, and that's not me, but it's okay. Then I started dabbling around and jumping around, and I went to work for .com at one point. This is in 2000. And then the .com, those of us that are old enough to remember this, there was a .com crash.
Really?
Yes.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it.
I'm pretty young.
Yeah. And I lost my job and I was scrambling and decided to jump into sales, which was not something I knew. Working for a company that sold commercial paper, really it went from boring to kind of boring, outside the .com. The .com was very fun and exciting. But
was it done for
a very similar format? Absolutely. Dunder Mifflin, something like that. But along that journey, I had made a pit stop at a small graphic design firm and had called Workhouse, which doesn't exist anymore. We were doing a lot of .com, but somehow our owners managed to get a project working for Jane Goodall. And I wasn't responsible. I was responsible for manufacturing the products and that the designers came up with for her brand. In 1999, the internet was super, 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 like those of you that don't know this, before there was the internet, there was a lot of paper being used for pretty much everything. The internet was very, very young. And my job was to create all of the marketing materials that you can easily access now digitally. And Jane Goodall came into our offices and she told me, because I was responsible for manufacturing everything, we had a one-on-one conversation where she said I was to make sure that everything that was produced had was not detrimental to the planet, paid fair wages,
Wow.
all the things that kind of like this green movement is right
Mhm.
now that is very common did not exist back then.
Wow.
And so it was my job to find paper manufacturers that didn't dump wastewater into farming fields. And
Mhm.
so I was calling all around the world, and I
Wow.
started to realize how absolutely challenging finding that information was. And I spent, I think was usually allocated like 3 hours for a project. And I think I spent nearly 100 hours calling all over the world trying
Wow.
to find product and manufacturers that could build all of these assets. So that sort of seeded the back of my brain um, in a sort of weird way and marinated. And when I went into this dot-com industry, which was one of the first companies that created cookies that we all hate, it was called Ad Relevance. And our job was to, we were the first company out there that created cookies for brands to own and plant on our computers. So you can
Oh, the
blame,
cookies from the computer. Yeah.
yeah. So you guys can blame me for that one too. Although
Oh,
I
wow.
was not the tech person. I was a marketing person at the time.
She didn't know that she didn't know the company. Don't blame her.
No, we called it spiders at the time. It was called, they would call them spiders at the time because they
It
crawled,
was the
we
World
thought we
Wide
would
Web.
crawl
Yeah.
the web. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I went to work for a manufacturing company where all of a sudden I realized that I had some intel on paper manufacturing for environmental purposes from my experience working with Jane Goodall. And I started working with all the design firms in our region. I'm in Washington State. So in our region, to encourage environmental efficacy in their marketing materials. So how to
Oh,
use
wow.
post-consumer waste products, products that use natural bleachers, all stuff that we consumers don't think about.
Mhm.
But from there, really embedded myself in the design industry. And then in 2006, I joined my business partner here, David Lemley, who I've been working with since then. And he and I worked on REI when we converted REI onto 100% post-consumer waste paper.
Oh, wow.
So we had been working together for a few years there. And then I started working for him, and the rest is history. And David's experience is with consumer packaged goods. So I just joined him, brought my environmental experience into the conversation. So it's kind of an added experience and benefit that when brands come and work for us, especially those that want to leave a negative or positive footprint, however you want to look at it, on their marketing, which is a big deal for packaging right now, is how not to create a bunch of garbage and leave, try not to destroy the earth in the process of making a buck.
Yeah.
So we have my history and David's prowess as a strategic brand builder, and we have worked on some pretty killer brands. So that's my 45-minute, 5,000 foot, 30,000 foot.
30,000, 50,000. It's when you're up that high, you know, everything looks,
I
it's like,
know.
looks
So
small. So there you
that's
go.
just my background coming into like, how did I get here is a strange journey, right? I've met
Yeah.
a number of people where it wasn't a linear path. It was definitely one thing influenced another on the way. Hey.
Well, you've inspired me. You know, we specifically use paper that is built by child labor, and maybe we'll think about getting rid of that.
Oh, so I think that stuff still exists. They don't
Yeah.
market it that way.
I can see these little Chinese people putting together sheets of
Yeah.
8x11 paper.
Oh, yeah. I don't know that it's China anymore. The paper that's done with
Vietnam.
child labor is being done in some of those countries that aren't as economically strong as China, which they've really turned
Yeah.
into a thing, haven't they?
Yeah. We still use faxes here. That's what we call the internet. So they're
we
still behind. Yeah. There you go.
we use smoke signals.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's good too. The fire
Mhm.
department says we can't do that anymore.
Yeah,
After
but
that one,
environmental.
after what we like to call, or they like to call, the incident, and
Oh, the incident.
the
Oh,
judge
dear.
calls the incident.
Okay.
So moving on now, how long has Retail Voodoo been around? And tell us about some of the
Yeah,
brands you work with.
sure.
Maybe tease out a couple success stories.
Sure. Well, okay, so Retail Voodoo in its Retail Voodoo incarnation has been around since 2011, but prior to that, it was Lemley Design, and
Mhm.
that's my business partner's name. And so technically, the firm has been in existence since the early 90s.
Wow.
We converted it to Retail Voodoo in 2011 for a couple of reasons. One was because I joined, because we were turning me into more of a partner, and we wanted to have some equitability in there. And then also, we had been a generalist firm that had done a lot of food and beverage, but we really wanted to kind of say, okay, we're really changing who we are as a business and moving towards a business as a force for good. So we use this Retail Voodoo moniker because the kind of results that we are able to deliver for our brands are pretty remarkable. We see a lot of early and mid-stage brands that come to us, and early to mid-stage could be uh, a startup that doesn't exist or
Mhm.
anybody less than 5 to 10 years, usually stuck somewhere in the $5 to $10 million range and really wanting to catapult to something much, much larger. But we've
Mhm.
also worked with larger brands that many of your folks might be familiar with, like Essential Water,
Mm.
um, Russell Stover, are um, on the more recent side, on the larger brands, but also retailers like West Marine and REI. We've worked with Starbucks, we've worked with PepsiCo, and then some of the smaller kind of fun brands that are really, really growing right now. Lesser Evil, a fun brand that I like to point out is we rebranded and basically developed a brand that maybe many of you have not even heard of because they just relaunched this year under a new name in March, called Henrietta Said. It's a snacking
Mm.
brand. It's peanut snacks that's buffalo flavored, buffalo mix flavored. So ancho chili and some really yummy flavors. But they launched in March, and by May met their annual sales goals.
Wow.
So those are the sorts of results that the brands come to us expect, is exceeding sales goals, sales velocity, and also sales margin, which in layman's term means we sold more product and the company made more money per product than they had been in the past, or than they had expected.
There you go. Well, I like the name Retail Voodoo. I mean,
Hmm.
that sounds like a fun iteration, and it kind of seems like that's maybe what more consumers are looking for. Something that's kind of a fun, spunky brand, or some sort of flavor to it, as opposed to Wilson and Wilson Associates. Yeah.
Well, I think it really depends on who you are. So, for example, if you're a PepsiCo or a Walmart, which we've worked with in the past, they typically come to us when they're wanting to do something different than what their current agencies are doing. So when you're a brand and you're a multi-billion dollar brand or multi-million dollar brand where a 1% growth or 1% loss is in the millions of dollars,
Yeah.
you tend to make more safer decisions,
Hmm.
or less risky. I'm going to call them risky decisions. And when you're really wanting to shake things up, you need to kind of step outside of that safe zone for a moment and be willing
Hmm.
to take a calculated risk. So you come to a firm like ours who is going to say, okay, here's the safe zone, and just outside the safe zone looks like this, and here's what the relative opportunity looks like, your relative growth opportunity or customer acquisition opportunity or margin opportunity, all of those types of things. So people come to us when they want to be challenged in their
Hmm.
thinking and they want to something different, or if they're wanting significant disruption. On the other side is we've had brands come to us that were there's one brand in particular that was a major national brand, came to us after 3 years of sales decline,
Hmm.
and they said we're not quite sure what to do in this scenario, and they hired us to come in because Walmart had said, if you don't fix this, we're going to remove your product off the
Whoa.
floor, which if you're selling product like this is a big deal.
Yeah. To
So
Walmart. Yeah.
yeah, so they came to us and they said, can you help us figure out what the scenario was? and we really needed to age down their positioning. So earlier I said we developed like what's your North Star. We call that positioning in technical terms. So we had to age down their North Star. They had been technically marketing to older Americans. And what we found was that opportunity was saturated, and older Americans meant also less virality. There's social media there's no potential growth. So we had to take their positioning and age it down to an audience that was at the time younger millennials who really wanted access to the product, but they didn't want to buy something that looked like something their grandmother would purchase, right? So it was a matter of like, okay, well, who are we talking to? Why do they buy? What is it? What's important to them? And then build that opportunity, and then use our design language and our marketing language in such a way that it would not only deliver on the messaging that we had created in the positioning, this North Star, but then also resonate and turn into sales. And within 1 year time, they had recovered 3 years of sales decline, and they were in the number one position in all what we call KPIs, basically everything that you would measure possible sales. They had gone to number one. So we were able to revitalize that brand by just redefining the audience and then designing a language system for them that worked for them. Does that make sense?
That totally does. And so basically by rebranding and re-imaging, perhaps they're rebranding their image to a more younger, maybe hipper audience, they were able to turn their sales around. Do I have that correct?
No, that's exactly what happened. So that's very, very important. One of my favorite brands when it comes to positioning that I think I don't know if your listeners might know, because this is also for a younger audience, is a water brand in a can called Liquid Death. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah, that's really popular.
It's really popular. And for 2 or 3 years, they really struggled, maybe even a little bit longer, because the industry had said to them, this is not our brand, but I love to talk about them as a case of positioning and strategy. People within the industry said, nobody's going to buy water in a can. That's just not going to happen. And then one of their marketers, and I give this to their founder, who is a marketer as well, said, let's double down on the fact that aluminum is recyclable, and we're going to go after this whole environmental play. So Liquid Death is basically water, and it stands for the death to plastic. And all of their brand positioning, if you go onto their website and you look at their videos, it's very edgy, because Generation X and younger millennials are very self-conscious about their environmental footprint and all of the elements of the generations before them and the damage that's been done in their mind. And they also wanted something that did not smell like mom and dad's water. So let's move away from the smart water. Let's move away. Like, I don't want that. I want something that talks to me. So they have like Tony Hawk on there and all of those brands. And the minute they started to talk about this environmental footprint and its alignment, their North Star around Liquid Death and death to plastic, and then they started using all of these viral video techniques that really spoke to this younger audience, that brand took off. So rather than trying to be this water in a can for everybody, they said, our positioning is going to be for this younger audience. This is what's important to them. We can deliver on it. So let's go for it. And so to give people an idea, they seemed like they were an overnight success. This is a few years of them working on this. And this is what positioning can do for you. If you're flopping around and not quite sure what to do with your brand positioning, start there, because then you know what to do with your design. Then you know what to do with your marketing.
That's pretty brilliant. And the cans are really cool to look at.
Totally.
Kind of like a tattooish sort of lookish design. What's funny is for longest time, and I'm not hip or cool, so I'm just some old guy.
I don't believe that, Chris. Come on now.
Clint Eastwood on the lawn going, get off my lawn with the hose. I reached that point. And so,
do you have a cane yet?
I probably should have one so that I can whack people.
There you go.
I don't need it to stand up because I go to the gym every day, but I just need one so I can hit
exactly.
people within reach.
Exactly.
Just because they need get off my lawn. But so I didn't really get it, but I looked at the branding on the can and I always thought it was beer.
Yeah. Yep.
I thought it was like El Loco, sort of
Yeah.
Mexican-based beer, and I
Yep.
was like, I don't know why I put that two together. And for the
Yep.
longest time, I didn't get that it was water. And one day I was looking at one, going, "What the hell is this again?" And I'm like, "Wait, water?
Yep.
Was it beer water?" Like,
Yep.
and but I don't hang out with the hip crowd. They don't talk to
Well,
me, and I don't
yeah,
talk to them.
exactly. You're not the target audience, so you're not getting any of the messaging, right?
I'm still drinking out of plastic bottles like an old
Yeah.
bastard.
Yeah.
So, well, what are you gonna do?
What are you
Um,
going to do?
what are you gonna do? I'm not cool and hip. I learned I wasn't cool and hip sometime in my 20s when MTV started putting bands on. Then I was like, "Who's that?" And
Exactly.
yeah, and then they quit putting music on altogether, and I
Yeah,
was
all
like, "Well,
together.
shit."
Yeah.
So why is branding important for brands? So entrepreneurs that are out there, people that are out there running
Yeah.
companies, why is branding important to them? And sometimes either repositioning or sometimes
Yeah.
really thinking about how they're building out that brand when they're coming to market.
Yeah. Well, the long and short of it is this: when you know who your target audience is, how they want to interact with you, what they expect from you, and how they want to be communicated with, you end up saving a lot of time and a lot of money with your marketing dollars. That's
Oh,
number one, right?
mhm,
Otherwise, you're doing what you call a shotgun approach. Let's try this. Now let's try this. Maybe they want this, or maybe they want that. And you can certainly get to the end result
mhm,
of finding all of that brand position or all of your target audience and what brand positioning might work for you from just trial and error. But
mhm,
it takes a long time and it usually takes a lot of money. And let's face it, most of us are not most of brands that are out there in this universe are not multi-billion-dollar brands or
oh,
even in the nine-figure million-dollar brands. And to be spending 40,000 or 100,000 or on on marketing activities that don't generate simply because you're doing trial and error, it is frustrating. And I also think that, or not, I don't think that, I also know that most brands, and this is all businesses, service business, it could be any business, when you understand what your brand is and you understand what your audience is looking for, then you can create even more products that fit their needs. You can dump the products and services that don't fit their needs. Like there's just an overall cost. We could get into the technological cost benefit to understanding your positioning. You invest in what all of that looks like up front, and you save yourself time and money on the end.
mhm. There you go. And I mean, do you have to sit down with people nowadays and say, "Hey, Gen Xers, what the hell do you people want already?"
A little bit. I mean, you can buy research for sure,
There you
right?
go.
You can buy research
Mhm.
and you can poll people. Polling people is a little bit tricky because most people, when they're being polled, are trying to figure out
Ah.
how you want the answer. And so they give you information that may be somewhat accurate, but maybe not 100% accurate. So it's a combination of polling people and researching people. There's actually an amount of anthropology that goes
Mhm,
into it. So we take a look at what are the buying trends, what's happening with social media, what's happening in popular culture, and then
mhm,
overlay that with any kind of research that we might do independently, and then say, based off of this information, here's how we would position the brand, or here's a kind of a design language that would work well for them. And when I say design language, I mean all the graphic design elements of a brand that you would
mhm.
have. That's the design language. So is blue going to be better than green, or sharp angles versus soft angles, that sort of thing. But yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
I think you did. There's
Okay.
there's there's a lot that goes into it. We used to, back in the day of brick and mortar companies, we used to use the shotgun approach
Yep.
if we didn't know who our target market was. And
Absolutely.
so we'd hit different industries or venues that
Yeah.
we thought were doing that. We'd
Yeah.
sometimes dumpster dive competitors.
Yeah.
Um, and then we kind of feel out where it would come, and then we respond to the market and whatever the consumers are like. Hey,
Yeah.
over here, we'll use you. And I've always admired people that can do branding and stuff, because we're not good at it. The Chris Voss show, I remember when we started, years ago, we were like, we're going to name it something about social media, and we're talking, social media
Mhm.
is really hot then. And I had the vision and foresight, or the lack thereof, one of the two, to say, I don't know that I want to be talking about this 10 years from now. I don't
Right.
know this is even going to be hot 10 years from now.
Yeah.
So what should we call it? And we called it the Chris Voss Show, because
Yeah.
then it can be whatever I want. Anytime we want
Absolutely.
to switch it.
Absolutely.
Now it's just really an old man on a lawn with a mic yelling at young kids, get off my lawn
Oh my
show.
gosh. Do you
which is-
have kids?
No, I don't.
Oh my gosh. Have you ever seen that Disney movie called Romeo and Juliet?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, there's a clip in there where I have kids, right? So one of the gnomes decides to attack another gnome garden. For those listening, you'll know this one, and
Yeah.
goes online and orders something called the Terraforminator, which is like
Right?
this lawnmower that basically will do construction on your yard and completely destruct it. I'll send you a clip so that you can see,
Sure.
because you will
Yeah.
totally laugh and say, I need one of those.
Well, gnomes are terrorists by
They
nature.
are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Everybody knows that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't trust gnomes.
Me too.
Anytime I see one, I go the other way, and I don't trust
Smart.
anybody. Yeah.
Smart. No.
You never know when they're going to turn on you. Like
No.
they just have that funny face. They stand there and they're just waiting for you to turn your back.
Yeah, see, now you got to go watch the movie,
knife goes
because
in.
it'll all come to life.
Oh,
You may have nightmares, but it is a
Anyway.
Disney movie, so it won't.
I
be too bad.
actually, you know how people fear clowns? I fear
Yes.
gnomes.
No,
So
you don't.
I'm just kidding.
Okay.
But I don't know. It sounds like a bit I could do on stand-up or something.
There you go.
I have people have a clown thing. I have a gnome thing.
There you go.
But there's also a gnome OnlyFans that I subscribe to as well. But we won't get into that. There probably is one. There is.
There probably is.
Yeah. So if this is kind of interesting, you've taken companies that are struggling with sales, they're struggling with their image. There's lots of different probably examples. Probably some simple ones are like Federal Express. Came out and said, we're just going to be FedEx because everyone calls us FedEx.
Yeah.
There's probably a few different, like my name, Chris Voss, everyone just calls me stupid. So now we just go with stupid and 4-letter expletives. But there's lots of different ways that brands can do that. And so why is it important to hire an agency like yours to try and figure out a way to maybe get out of the box, or whatever the case is, to try and figure out a new way to rebrand?
Well, it really depends on what your end goal is. So
Mhm.
I want to go on the record of saying that not everybody that comes to us is struggling. There are many brands that are doing quite well and trying to figure out, how can I do better, or setting themselves up for what's really popular with small to mid-sized brands right now is creating a brand that they can exit with. And exit means that they can sell for a lot of money. And so they'll look to us to create something with incredible value. So why is it that you would go with a branding firm, particularly if you're in CPG? Why would you go with a firm with a CPG expertise? Or if you're in medical industry, why would you go to somebody with medical expertise? It's no different than if you are training for a marathon and you want to get better at your PRs, or you are a weightlifter or do yoga. You typically want to go to those people that can help you get to that next level, because it's really hard to, what I like to say, operate on yourself. You can get to a certain level, but what you can't see or what you don't know about the marketplace, or it could be hindering you in whatever your end goal is. So you want to come to somebody that's been doing this for brand over brand over brand over brand, because we bring continual upgraded expertise. Not only do we do brand work, but on our end, we're constantly educating ourselves. And that's a question that I would also recommend, that when you're working with any expert, whether it's a CPA or branding firm, just find out, how do you guys stay on top of trends? How do you guys make sure you're implementing something that is 2023 looking forward, not something that you've been doing since 1989 or whenever. So we also know that if you are in a place of, listen, our sales are flat, or we're losing margin, or something's going on, sometimes the changes that need to be made are ones that are hard to make or hard to see. And so it's much easier to have somebody external do the quote unquote operation and say, this is really where the error is. Mostly there's blind spots in place. It's
Yeah.
not that people don't know what they're doing. We work with many, many smart people and many, many smart brands. But if you were working with a brand and let's say you have wearing too many hats within your organization, you're probably not going in deep enough, or you don't have time to do the investigative work. You want somebody to partner alongside with you. You need that external expertise like you would a doctor or a teacher or a therapist in any other particular way. Those are all the reasons why you would want to use somebody externally for any sort of expertise, marketing, finance, HR, that sort of thing.
Do you guys do brand repair? And it sounds like you keep brands from getting in trouble, but do you do brand repair? Like if they misbrand or they step outside of their norm and they end up kind of in the PR poo-poo toilet?
Yeah, that it really depends on what the situation is. Most people, if you're having what we would call a PR crisis, that's going to be more communications. That's going to be a PR specialist. That would not be us.
Yeah.
We can help triage after the fact, especially if it's something that is brand centric. So if there's a problem with the brand intrinsically that needs to be updated, then that's when we partner up with PR folks, and firms will sometimes reach out to us and say, hey, we need to do some triage on this brand positioning or the brand in general, then we'll assist. But typically, if you are having a PR crisis in the moment, you usually have a PR expert that's in there immediately, because brand work takes about 2 to 3 months before it can be done. And then it's like 4 to 6 months to investigate, develop, and then implement. And if you're in the middle of a crisis, 4 months you could be out of business by then.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to get into this, but we have one of the Anheuser-Busch family members on next week. They published a book, and the book is about how it went from a family business to being taken over. There's a story, I guess, where it was taken over by a company, and it ended up being a hostile takeover, and kind of a story about the brand and stuff. But there is kind of a famous kerfuffle right now about I guess Bud Light trying to maybe do a little rebranding or expanding their brand or some segue.
Yeah.
And we've talked about how branding and managing your brand in such a way, sometimes it can backfire.
It can.
Yeah.
It can.
And so it can end up some different ways.
Yeah. Well, the Bud Light situation. The Bud Light situation is a little bit tricky because you can tell that their intentions on the front end were to create an inclusivity in a category that generally doesn't have any. So what that means is light beer is not really known to be a really wide-ranging category of types of drinkers, right? And I think the biggest challenge that they had was beer in general is seeing decline in sales because Gen Z and younger millennials are not drinking alcohol at the rate that those of us Gen Xers and older and even older millennials drink. And so beer is really getting hit very hard. And this inclusivity play that they were doing with the can was a pivot to talk to a younger generation that is open to all of this kind of life, every lifestyle. And I think this is without me seeing what the strategy was. And this is so I'm just like, I am, what do you call that? Quarterbacking.
Yeah, we're just kind of kicking the can around.
If I was to be sitting in the room with them, I'm imagining that the conversations were around how to bring in this new audience. And what happens with all of the brands that we work with is the same thing that happened in this moment. How do I get a new audience without alienating my existing audience? And I think that the recommendations on the Bud Light audience side, when they were looking at it, perhaps were not thinking about what the current audience, how they might respond to it. That's the first part. Now, the second part of this is, unfortunately, it only takes a few people, and when I say a few in a country of billions, it
Yeah.
only, it could be it could be a couple million people that have an issue and start flooding social media and creating a negative backlash where it's possible that a majority of their audience is like, I don't care, I'm going to drink the Bud Light beer. But now you've got a million or two people or a million people that are talking shit out there, excuse my French. And now we've got a PR crisis, right?
Yeah.
And the unfortunate component is the influencer that Bud Light used was caught in the crosshairs, and I am not sure that that person was supported when all the shit went down. So there's a number of things that happened there, and I don't know all the backstory, but all I'm looking at is you could tell Bud Light was just like going, let's just create a more inclusive product. We know that this audience is open to it. Oh crap, these people are totally against this. Bud Light did exactly what they should have done from a business standpoint, is they tried to see if they could keep that campaign going. And once they realized it wasn't going to fly, they abandoned it and moved back to some more traditional, the traditional marketing. I don't know that they've recovered that audience yet. It's possible.
Or the
But
business for that matter.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And
Evidently they haven't.
yeah. And it's the same beer. It's just, for me, it's just like,
It's light
just
beer, for hell's sakes. Who drinks that crap?
my
Like
God.
I was just like, there are people drinking light beer?
Well,
Nice.
the
Probably gonna lose my light beer on.
you might. Ooh. I just was like, really, I personally was a little bit shocked about the violence that was demonstrated on social media.
Yeah,
Like,
like people
if you
shooting their beers. Like,
if you
that's
don't
beer,
like
man.
if you don't like the beer, don't buy it.
Yeah, just
End of story. Done.
wasting good beer. I mean, I used to drink, and wasting good beer, that seems like a heresy in and of itself. There's a lot to that whole kerfuffle, and it seems like it's going to be written about in business books from years to come, because a lot of beer brands have embraced or you said, we're acceptance of being inclusive and the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
And how they responded to it, where they just kind of went blackout with not saying anything for like 30 or 60 days. One thing that was interesting to me was I found it offensive, actually, as a man, was the young lady who was one of their VPs, and they caught a video of her where she basically just crapped on the people who bought the brand. And she's like, well, it's a frat boy brand, and just the thing men do to get together. And it's time to change all that and throw, fuck that model.
Yeah.
And that was the whole thing. And I was offended by it. I was like, yeah, well, fuck you, man. And I'm very supportive of the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
But I was just like, wow, it's like the PGA Tour just saying, fuck people who play golf. We're gonna go with frisbee golf or something,
Yeah, it's not a smart idea. And so when we talk about brand positioning, let's circle back to this whole brand positioning thing. If your company does not honestly believe in the audience that got you to where you are, you need to check yourself. So if she genuinely said those things and she meant those things, that to me is an indication of poor leadership, because you cannot discount, regardless of whether you align with the beliefs or the people of the brand. You can't discount the fact that they're the consumer. And if you are not consumer first, your consumers will know right away. And if she's discounted this brand and started targeting a new audience, and then talking publicly about what the former audience is like, that's going to be hard to recover from. And there will probably need to be a little bit more, you'll see more PR as the brand tries to recover their sales and their audience in that regard. You have to respect your consumer and your clients. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem.
If they feel like you don't respect them, then you got problems. And I think her video was the real impetus.
Really?
Because, they caught onto they locked into that really clearly.
Yeah.
Because most beer brands have done LGBTQ inclusive
In
stuff.
some way.
They've done it in some way. Every
Yeah.
brand has.
Yeah.
But, so why did it go? And I think it was just her callous sort of video that they caught,
Really
because I saw that right
interesting.
away in the thing. And even I was offended. I don't drink light beer. I'll drink
Yeah.
normal beer.
Yeah.
I'm a man, damn it.
Yeah.
I'm not drinking any light beer, and American beer is so awful anyway. But next week we'll have Billy Bush on, and that's not Billy
That's
Bush
pretty great.
from Jimmy Carter days.
You're right.
That's Billy Bush from the Bush Anheuser-Busch. I know it's going to be interesting. He wrote the book about something else completely with the
Interesting.
Anheuser-Busch and their
Yeah.
family and stuff. But
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see his take on how that spun out.
Yeah.
But the lesson here is branding is important, and honoring your brand and honoring
Yeah.
your consumer is important.
Absolutely.
What else haven't we touched on that we can move on to?
Oh man. Well, I don't know how.
Packaging,
Yeah, I don't know how
branding.
much of your audience is in the CPG space.
Mhm,
But on the packaging front, one of the biggest things. Let's talk a little bit about. We're going to just talk about design here for a moment,
mhm.
and the hot topic of the day, which is this generative AI
Oh, there you go.
and its influence in design right now. So,
Mhm,
one of the biggest things that we are seeing in our industry are startup brands using, well, I'm going to be very, very clear, generative AI versus AI. So, AI is something that is technology that we've told the computer to think about and do. And
mhm,
generative AI is kind of this open platform where it's creating from sources out in the universe that it has access to. Incidentally, I don't know if you know this, but there is a, I don't remember what part of the government is going to be investigating the ChatGPT platform because the something about where and how ChatGPT collects information, whether it's
mm,
copywritten or not, and
yeah.
uses it as an aggregation tool,
Mhm,
is something of concern. So I thought that was interesting. But let's talk about AI in the world of marketing and in the world of design, and that is what we use generative AI as a kind of a foundational tool. You cannot create something net new.
mhm,
Like AI takes what's out there and creates an aggregate of what's out there. And if
mhm,
you are looking to create something new that's disruptive, generative AI won't do that. Generative AI will create something that fits whatever is happening out in the marketplace right now. And if you need massive disruption, you can't use something that's already out in the marketplace. So, how our team uses generative AI is in two ways. Whether we're looking at writing or design, we have a set of prompts that we like to use to help us kind of create a thinking point.
mhm,
So rather than starting with a blank page, we've got our brand positioning, we've got all of our tools, we know who our target audience is. That's great. Now it's time to do the creative component. We use AI as kind of like what is a blank slate? Where do we start from? Because what generative AI is great at that
mhm.
humans are not at is generative AI doesn't have a bias.
Oh,
And as humans, we always have a bias.
yeah,
We
that's true.
always take, so there is a particular approach. So when you're looking at design firms, you might notice there is always there's always some consistency between design. Some design firms sell their design and their capabilities based off of having a style.
Mhm,
And because people come to us asking us to build these businesses that make loads and loads of money are incredibly disruptive, they look to us for opportunity to crack things open.
mhm,
So it's really how we recommend and we recommend this to any marketer out there, is to use AI as a way of looking, as a tool to kind of look at whatever work they're doing in a way that they might not naturally do it, so that they can remove bias from the work, from whatever their outputs are. Does that make sense?
definitely, definitely. It's interesting how the whole thing's gonna work out. I believe the, copyright, patent, US government thing has already said that, they're not gonna allow, certain things like that to be licensed. There's kind of an interesting thing with copyright where, you have access to parody
Yes.
and,
Yes.
but they may have to rewrite the rules on it because,
Yeah.
if you're it's one thing if I'm parroting something. So like if I take the Chris Voss show and I'm
Yeah.
another brand and I
Yeah.
write stuff on it, or go,
Right.
hey, look at this
Yeah.
idiot with all the blue stuff in the background.
Yeah.
That's parody.
Yeah.
And commentary, and I think there's some rules that has to kind of improve the product or something a little bit. But
Hmm.
when it's being taken from like 200 different sources or something,
Right.
and you're just like, it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of interesting how that whole thing's going to work out.
Yeah, I just finished up my MBA program, and my last quarter we were talking about legal,
Mm.
and our professor was talking about how generative AI is going to be challenging a lot of copyright laws. Then we'll
Yeah.
probably see a lot of changes in the next several years.
Yeah. And I know some ad agencies and different agencies like yours have banned it because they're worried that they'll pick up other people's work or copyright
Yeah.
issues.
Yep.
And really what the essence of what they sell is the individual talent
Absolutely.
and the
Yep.
skill and their
Yep.
copy that they sell.
Yeah.
And that's the hard work of it. And
Yeah.
if you're just, I don't know, editing whatever's GPT is spitting out,
Yeah.
I mean, how much value is in that, really? I don't know.
Well, it depends on how you use it,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
So for example, like I'll tell you, like we just finished up another packet. We're going to be delivering some concepts to a client. And for us, we usually do somewhere, I don't know, 60 to 100 concepts internally before we
Oh, wow.
present about 2 or 3.
Wow.
And I think there were a couple of concepts that were foundationally came from Chat GPT, whatever the equivalent is.
Mm-hmm.
But when we layer it against the positioning, it wasn't working. It wasn't meeting the needs. But that doesn't mean that idea didn't go, oh, I like how that's happening. Let's pull that part of the idea and apply it over here, which is all the creative is. Creative is take what the need is and start to go, oh, I like this color, or I like how this is interacting, or I like how this does something like that. So I think if you are lifting Chat GPT wholly for itself, you're going to get shit. It'll look beautiful. We call it lipstick on a pig. It'll look beautiful. It's not going to do the work that it needs to do. But that doesn't mean it can't be a tool. Just like when in branding, this was before my time, but I know about this, is when computers were first brought into graphic design, it was all being done by hand. Yeah. People were losing their mind. Computers were going to kill the industry. It was going to kill creativity. People are going to do it was going to, and if anything, computers has amplified creativity to a point that at that time they couldn't have even thought of.
Yeah.
Like at all. So I think we're on the front end of that. And I don't think people should be afraid of it. I think they have to be vigilant is probably the word. Is make sure that you're not, like everything that we do, we run through copyright. Everything that we do is cross-checked, because if we do anything, whether it's creating a name, creating a package, creating marketing activities, if it isn't legit, that's our credibility on the line, period, end of story. But is it something to be afraid of? No, it's gonna, don't use it 100% of the time quite yet. Watch what it does. But what you don't want to be is a marketer that avoids it. And then in 5 years, when it's now working as it should be, you're going to be behind. Like you have to start to think about how to incorporate it into, and I think this is going to be true with all businesses. Just play with it. See what happens. Don't use it as a crutch. Use it as kind of another tool. Does it help you think differently? Does it help you think better, smarter? That's what I would say on our end. What we're being told, at least in the design industry, as all of us senior levels are talking about ourselves, like if we aren't looking at how to leverage AI as a tool in 5 years, those that don't know how to use it are going to be unemployable.
There you go. I believe you're true. You're correct in that, because I think to me it's a wonderful idea of playground. Like you can fart around with ideas where you go, hey, try this and see what works. And, I mean, I think I had someone on the show, one of the professors or authors from some big school,
Yeah.
he said, we're going to be maybe creating less and writing less, but being more editors
Yeah.
than anything else, where we're
Maybe.
going
Yeah.
to take a look at
Maybe.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a recent story of the attorney who used
Yeah.
ChatGPT to write his
Yeah.
argument and
Yes, I
references
heard
for
about it. And
precedents.
like then none of them existed or
Yeah, like
something
it
bananas
just
like
made
that.
up stuff and
Yes,
or
somebody didn't do their
yeah.
homework.
The
Yeah.
internet has fake stuff on it. Who knew? Yeah,
What?
yeah, a small portion of it, I think,
No. Oh,
or maybe
wow.
it's the
I'm
vastness of it. I
shocked.
forget. It's one of the two.
Yeah.
Shocked, I say, shocked. So there you go. Well, this has been really insightful, Diana.
Yeah.
How can people reach out to your company and work with
Sure.
you, get
Yeah.
advice from you, consult, et cetera, et cetera?
Sure. Well, you can always reach out to me I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. Diana Fryc. There's only one of me. Thankfully or unfortunately, however you want to look at it. And I communicate a lot through there. You can also, and you can link in with me too. You don't have to communicate with me. You can just follow my BS. You can also take a look at us at retail-voodoo, retail-voodoo.com. And we're on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram right now. That's our only channels. And you can email me directly on diana.fryc@retail-voodoo.com.
There you go. And did we get a plug-in for the podcast?
Sure. Yeah. And those of you that are interested in hearing about women leaders in this kind of food, beverage, and wellness space on the CPG side, take a look at the Gooder podcast. We are on Apple. Apple is where our biggest audience is, and Spotify, on Amazon, all the major platforms we're out there as well. You'll find more details on the Retail Voodoo website as well for that, for the podcast.
There you go. Well, it's been fun, Diana. We've learned a lot and kicked around the can. Thank you very much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Oh gosh, my pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Chris.
And thanks to my audience for tuning in. As always, you can find us on Apple too as well. You can find us at goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss. Subscribe to the LinkedIn newsletter. Go to YouTube.com, TikTok, all the crazy places all those kids are playing and whatever. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. And we'll see you guys.